Alright, hey everybody, welcome back for another Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 video. I'm Matt. Today we're going to be doing some more testing with my 4070 Ti. So those of you who have been following along in the last few videos, you saw that flying around New York City in the Sting S4, we were getting down to somewhere around 20 FPS native in the simulator, down to sometimes 15, and with frame generation on, we were able to double that. So I was doing a little bit more testing to figure why my frame rates were so low. I had an idea, but I wanted to get the data for sure so I could share it with you guys, so that depending on what you're looking at for a simulator, you can have a better idea of what a 4070 Ti would do for you if you have a CPU similar to mine. I am running a Ryzen 9 5900X. So some things that I've changed since the last video. Now my the way you're seeing me with my green screen background, I've always used a virtual green screen, but before we were using Zoom. I think Zoom is a little better than what I have now. Right now I'm using Nvidia's native one, and you can download that as an add-on, and I have it enabled in my OBS. But so even though it doesn't do as good of a job at getting rid of the background behind me, what is good about it is it offloads my virtual green screen from my CPU, and it puts it onto the GPU instead. So it what you saw in my last few videos is my GPU has available headroom, but my CPU does not. So anytime we can offload tasks from the CPU and put them on the GPU, that's ideal for us. So this is kind of what we're looking at right now. I don't know if we need to see all of that. So CPU low utilization as always, because we're main core limited, and this simulator is not optimized to use all the cores. And right now, because we're not doing a whole lot, and we're at 1080p, our GPU is down at 37%. So what I'm going to do is I'm looking to take some data here on an Excel spreadsheet I have, based on all the things that I run in the background. So I'm taking you guys along for the ride, collecting some data as I work through this spreadsheet. So right now we're sitting here on the ground. If I go and check out my settings, so we're on the ground at JFK on runway 31, and I'm loaded up in the Cessna G1000, and the reason we're in that versus the Sting is because when I went back and did some checking on FPS hits of third-party aircraft, I found that the Cessna 1000 in single monitor mode, like we are now, let's see. So I have 90. Oh, so when I did this in New Haven, Connecticut, I got 93 FPS on the ground, and when I did it with the S4, I had 72 FPS on the ground. So you see right there, so that's in New Haven versus right now we're in JFK. But in New Haven, you can see that's a 21 FPS hit out of, you know, we started at 93, so that's like a 15% hit to the FPS just from choosing a third-party aircraft. So I do enjoy flying those third-party aircraft, so I'm not going to stop doing that, but just so you're aware, depending on which third-party aircraft you're using, you could be seeing something along those lines of a 15% hit. So here we are in a Cessna 1000, just to kind of baseline, see what the sim is capable of. So we're running 1080p, and the reason we're doing that, all my monitors I have are all 1080p monitors, and that's because I knew I was going to be running this 5 monitor setup, and I knew 5 monitors at 2K is a boatload of pixels, and I figured any GPU I had was going to have a difficult time doing that. So that's why I chose to run everything at 1080p, because 1080p times 5 monitors it comes up to about 10 million pixels, which is 17% more than what you would get out of a 4K, a single 4K monitor if you do the math. So the load on the GPU with 5 1080p monitors, from my math, is 17% more than a person running 4K on a single panel. That said, that does not factor optimizations into that of how Windows optimizes their multi-monitor mode. So we know that multi-monitor mode is gonna give you a performance hit. So you gotta factor that in. So anyhow, 1080p, TAA, frame generation's off, and you can see we're in custom there. I'll go to Ultra, and then what I do is I back the. So let's do Ultra first. I'll show you what that looks like. So right there, we're down at 30 and climbing, 39. But what I have found just from testing is when I back the LODs down to 100, I get a lot better performance. So I'm going to do my testing like that. In a future video, I might do more testing with them up at. All right, so right there. So we're looking at about 48 frames. So now, if you were just looking to run one monitor, you can probably get away with keeping the LODs way up high like they were and not have any issues. Because I'm running 3 monitors, have been seeing a degradation there. So let's so I'm gonna record my on my spreadsheet here. So one monitor, we're in DX12 TAA, and we're seeing 48 frames, up to bouncing between 48 and 49. I'm gonna say 48. Now when we put it in triple monitor mode, so I'm not even gonna fly around. We know that flying around, it's gonna be generally somewhere around this. Maybe we'll do one pattern. One pattern. I do have. Thought I had. Rotate. Let's see if we can get it trimmed out. So limited by main thread. What we know by that is enabling DLSS is not going to help us. I do want to use my head tracking here. Why is this not working? There we go. And head tracking, even with so a single monitor, even with head tracking, I really got to crank my head over there. Now, of course, my settings are optimized for triple monitor mode, so that's why it's not going to be a great indication. You can fine-tune that, but yeah. So we're seeing a frame dip, you know, cruising around here. We're down at 42, but it's a consistent 42. That looks just fine. See if we can get ourselves back on the runway for a decent baseline for the next ones. Flaps are coming out. Probably be faster just to restart the respawn.
500.
Still fast. We're going to slip this just a little bit to get ourselves down because we're still fast. Alright, that looks a little better. Still fast. Alright, back on the ground. Trying to be fairly centered down the runway, otherwise our baseline's not going to be the greatest. Come on, stop. Alright, and here we are back at 40, 45, 50 again. Okay, so next thing we're gonna do is pop. So let's just go straight to triple monitor. What I found in the past when I did this is that going and doing Air Manager and popping out panels. Actually, that we can do. Let's. So I'm gonna use pop out manager here. Maybe. So we're starting at 50, let's see, or 40, 47, 48 is what we recorded. So let's see what popping out the panels does. So we're still right here at So we're at 46 now. So that's something that Microsoft actually fixed. Oops. So I'm going to make a note here, 46 with 2 panels popped out. Alright, so I'm going to close. So that's awesome. Let me show you that. So 2 panels popped out and we're at 46. So that's good news. Alright, we're going to close these panels. We should see it jump back up to 48, and yeah, it's at 50 now. So another thing that I added that you should be able to see. In the top right-hand corner here, you can see I added an FPS counter in addition to the developer mode one. So this, in the top right-hand corner, I have the Steam version of Windows, and what I found is the Steam FPS counter works pretty flawlessly. MSI Afterburner, whenever I go into triple monitor mode or pop out panels, I think it's when I pop out panels, it freezes and crashes the sim. GPU Tweak, which is an Asus tool, when I go popped out panels, it crashes the sim. I think those are the only 2 that I tried that don't work, and then now we see this Steam one works. So what I can do now is I'm going to go and put this into frame generation mode. Actually, you know what? Before we do that, turn that off. I'm going to pull this up. So GPU utilization right now we can see is around 35 to 40. So now let's go ahead and turn on frame generation. And let's see if we can get it higher than 3540. So first of all, we see that in the sim we got 50 FPS, and now what I'm actually seeing on the monitor is double that at 100. Now my monitor is 75 hertz, so I'm not going to be able to see 100 anyhow, but so this thing is still showing us. What if I put it off to the side? So I can still see it even though you can't. It's still saying 36 to 40, so no change there to the GPU. So it's like the GPU's really not working very hard to give us those extra frames, but we have extra frames. So now what we're going to do is pop out some panels. We're going to go in experimental, add 1, add 2. Okay, and now right there you can see what just happened in the FPS. So, so multi-monitor mode in the sim still absolutely slaughters your performance. So we went from 48 and now we're down to 30. So I'd have to do the math there, but that's a pretty significant hit. You know what? I'm going to add, let's see, insert a column. So we're going to do 1 minus that. Yikes. So 37%. All right, so continuing along, hang on. So continuing along, so gray panels we're not doing because that's not a Cessna 1000 thing based on how I have Air Manager set up. So now we're going to launch Air Manager and see what that does for us. So opening up Air Manager, we're still at 30 or so. Oh, I already had it running. Of course, things are not happy right now because I already had it running and tried to open it again. There it is. So with Air Manager just open, we're still at 30. Let's launch... So I guess I had it open the entire time. I should probably close it. So if I close it, you can see we're still at that 30. So just having Air Manager open doesn't hurt the frame rate at all. So if we open Air Manager and pop out my two G1000 panels, we can see that having those popped out drops us down to, I'm going to call it 24. Come on. So that's a 20, is that right? Yeah, that's a 20% hit. What the heck? Ouch. Okay, now let's pop out some panels. That's already open too. Alright, panels popped out. We're at 24, I'm going to call it. So no hit there for popping out panels. Thank God. 24. OBS I already have going, so we're just going to call that 24. Nvidia background removal we already have going. You know what? Let's... for the heck of it. Really? Recorded all that and wasn't showing my FPS. Another thing is when I switch over to another window that's not the game, you can see that the FPS starts recording differently. If I switch back over to the game and click on this, you can see the FPS goes back into frame generation mode. So I'm going back over into OBS and I'm going to disable my face camera, and we can see FPS jumps up to 26 if I click in the sim, just to be sure. No, it's still down at... Yeah, 20... I'm going to call it 24 again. It's kind of bouncing back and forth between 24 and 25. I'm going to call it 24. So that's telling us that my Nvidia background removal for my virtual green screen is also not hurting our frame rate at all, which is a big difference from what Zoom was doing to us before. So let's activate that. I already have screen copy going. That's how you're able to see my... Interesting. Okay, that's how you're able to see my map. So I'm going to call that 24. Head tracking is already enabled and in standby mode, so when I move my head around, we're still around 24, 25. And then in standby mode, it's still at 24, 25. So I'm going to put 24 again. And when we're tracking, not a big hit, so 24. So the only things that hit our frame rate, really, out of everything, is when I load up Air Manager panels. Now, in the past, when I fly... when I fly with the Sting, I've been in the habit of popping out 2 carbon fiber panels as well. Okay, so I can see that that doesn't really hurt us. So a blank panel really doesn't do much for us. It's really these G1000s. Now what if I use a G3X instead? Same thing, 24, 25. So whether it's G1000 or a G3X bezel, both of them are about the same in terms of hit to the frame rate. Alright, G1000 panels are back. Okay, so I think that's everything we need to go fly. So what I'm looking at here, I'm looking at GPU usage, and I can see I'm now up at saying 75, 70. So you're not able to see this. I'm looking right here, and I'm using the Xbox game bar, but because it's an overlay, I'm not able to record that in the stream. I already tried to figure out how to do that, and I'm not able to do it. So unfortunately, you're gonna have to trust me on what I say is there. I will say it matches what we see here in Task Manager. So I'm looking at, so GPU is 75, we're 75 here, CPU 31. Okay, that's reporting a little bit less than what Task Manager is saying. VRAM 42, RAM is 50, memory is 50. So those people who ask, you know, what do you need for RAM? There's your answer right there. If you had 16, you'd be at 100%, which is not ideal. GPU temperature looks good. I really wish I had a way to monitor my CPU temperature. That's one of the things I like about MSI Afterburner. I haven't figured out how to do that yet without using Afterburner, but here we are. Alright, so let's get rid of that. And let's go fly this around and see what it does in the city. So, Cessna 1000, with popped out panels. We're looking at about 24 on the ground here at let's see. Yeah, we're looking at 24 on the ground here. All right, let's get moving. Power's coming in, brakes coming off. Flaps are up. It's funny going from that Sting S4 to the Cessna 172. The Cessna just feels heavy. Whether it's getting up to speed on the runway, lifting off, it just feels sluggish. Alright, we're coming right. So in the pattern, we're looking not too big of a deal. 24 frames still. Now what's great is we're looking at 24, 25 frames. But in terms of fluidity of the frames, that frame generation really helps. It's much smoother. So right there, 20, we dipped down to 20. If I didn't have frame generation on, the smoothness would have gone out the window. That right there, that feels like 50 FPS. That does not feel like 26. Having flown this thing a whole bunch before frame generation, I can say frame generation absolutely helps to make it feel smoother. I also tried messing around with DLSS a bit, and what I'm finding is it's really not helping. Let's do one more circle like that with DLSS on. So DLSS, I like how they added an auto mode there, but we're going to put it in quality just to ensure that it's on. That drops my render resolution down to 1280 by 720. And now frames are down below 20. Okay, there we go. Now we're back to 22, 23. But it doesn't look like it's helping at all. And that's because DLSS is supposed to help your GPU out by rendering it a lower resolution. I guess your CPU is still doing the same amount of work.
500.
So because we have no bottleneck at all on the GPU here, because we now have a powerful, a 4070 Ti is much more powerful than what a 5900X is able to deliver in the sim. So our bottleneck is now 100% our CPU, so DLSS does nothing for us, but frame generation is what's saving our butts. So back to TAA mode. Alright, so we'll go full throttle and we'll see if we can hurry up and get to the city. Now if I really start ripping the controls, I mean, it still feels nice and smooth. We get down lower to the ground, 20 frames. I mean, big difference from what 20 frames felt like before frame generation. So in terms of, was it worth it for me to upgrade from a 3080 up to a 4070 Ti? I'll say it was absolutely worth it. I had the 4080 for 2 years. I bought it right when they came out in 2020, and now here we are in 2023, and I decided to upgrade. I'll be able to sell the 3080 right now. They're selling on eBay for in the ballpark of $500. So you figure I paid $850 for the 4070 Ti, so you know it'll end up costing me about $350 out of pocket. So yeah, I'll say that's worth it. If I'm getting $500 for the for the 3080, and I paid $700 for it. That's $200 to own a graphics card for 2 years. That's $100 a year for the graphics card. That's like for just $9 a month, you can fly a 3080. And because of the upgrade, we're making our way to the city at 50 frames per second. Now what I did find earlier is that diving down here, I saw just this water had a pretty serious impact to the frame rate. Let's see if it does it again. It seems okay right now. Taking the scenic route. Well, I got the throttle to the floor.
Cessna 5 Whiskey Tango, leaving my airspace frequency change approved.
Yeah, frames seem
Kennedy
to be doing
Tower,
just fine there.
Cessna
I don't know what.
Niner Tree 5 Whiskey Tango, frequency change.
I don't know what hung it up earlier on me,
New
but it
York
was
approach
dipping down
Cessna
pretty
November
hard there.
Niner Tree 5 Whiskey Tango is type Cessna Skyhawk 5 miles west of Kennedy, 200 feet.
Check on what we got for weather.
Request clearance to transition Bravo airspace.
Now, before I load, I always try to lift these clouds up.
November Niner Tree 5 Whiskey Tango, New York approach. Squawk 1005.
To get rid of the wind. That way it's nice and
Squawk
smooth.
1005 Cessna 5
'Cause I do
Whiskey
find that the
Tango.
wind, because it does a whole lot of this.
Cessna 5 Whiskey Tango radar contact 6 miles west of Kennedy, 400 feet. Cleared through the Bravo airspace.
Yeah,
Cleared
so
through
with
the
no
Bravo
wind,
airspace, Cessna 5
we're up at
Whiskey Tango.
28 frames. If I stop touching things, we're up at 28 frames. Now if I add the wind back
Cessna
in,
5 Whiskey Tango, contact New York approach on 128.8. Good day.
128.8 Cessna 5 Whiskey Tango. New York
I
approach
guess it's
Cessna
not a-
November Niner Tree
If I
5
had the wind
Whiskey
back in, we
Tango,
gained frames.
600 feet.
I'll say not a
Cessna
significant
November
impact.
Niner Tree 5 Whiskey Tango, New York approach altimeter 29.9 to continue as planned. Cessna 5 Whiskey Tango, you're leaving my airspace radar service terminated. Squawk 1200. Frequency change approved.
Squawk 1200. Frequency change approved Cessna 5 Whiskey Tango. New York approach Cessna November Niner Tree 5 Whiskey Tango is type Cessna Skyhawk 1 miles east of Kilo Juliet Romeo Bravo 1000 feet. Request flight following.
Cessna November Niner Tree 5 Whiskey Tango, New York approach. Squawk 4111.
Full up. Squawk 4111 Cessna 5 Whiskey Tango.
Cessna 5 Whiskey Tango radar contact 1 mile northeast of Kilo Juliet Romeo Bravo, 200 feet.
So if I click back in the Microsoft window again, you see the frames climbing right back
Roger,
up.
Cessna 5 Whiskey Tango. New York approach, Cessna November 9 Tree 5
So one thing about the
Whiskey
Cessna
Tango.
is it really does not
Request
like to
clearance
climb to the
to
top of this
transition
tower
Bravo
if I'm trying to do
airspace.
a stick climb like that.
Cessna November
This thing
9
does not want to
5
climb.
Whiskey Tango New York approach. Cleared through the Bravo airspace.
Cleared through Bravo airspace, Cessna 5 Whiskey Tango.
Cessna 5 Whiskey Tango, you're leaving my airspace. Resume on navigation. Contact New York approach on 128.8. Good day.
New York approach, Cessna November 9 Tree 5 Whiskey Tango. Request clearance to transition Bravo airspace.
Cessna November 9 Tree 5 Whiskey Tango New York approach. Cleared through the Bravo airspace.
Cleared through Bravo airspace, Cessna 5 Whiskey Tango.
My head tracking is almost like losing itself on me. I don't know if that's because I'm turning my head sideways too much. But right here, I mean, flying through these buildings, that would be the hardest hitting thing. And we're doing just fine at 18 frames native, and that's given us just under 40, 37, 38.
Stall. Stall. 500.
So we're at ultra graphics with LODs at 100. So if we can be messing around like we're doing here in between buildings in the city, we can fly absolutely anywhere in the sim and be well within a playable frame rate. So in my mind, upgrading this GPU took the sim from, you know, if you wanted to fly to New York City or if you wanted to fly to LAX or something like that, you'd have to jump into your graphics settings and turn things down. Now you can fly anywhere. If we really wanted to get greedy and we're in remote areas, we could probably turn the LODs up to full ultra, which I've never been able to fly full ultra on this sim before. I've always been a combination of medium to high graphics. So now the fact that we can fly somewhere in full ultra with 5 monitors, that is what we've always been trying to achieve with this setup. And the fact that the 4070 Ti enabled that is huge. I know it's a controversial topic, the 4070 Ti, because of how much they're charging for it. But it is, you know, and because the rasterization performance isn't a generational leap forward from the 3080. But that frame generation, so strictly looking at the application to Microsoft Flight Simulator, that frame generation is what really helps flight simmers. Alright, so we just saw the Cessna 1000. So for the heck of it, even though we've done past videos in it, we're going to jump into the Sting and try to do the same thing. Let's see if we can spawn at the Statue of Liberty and save ourselves a little bit of time. So once again, we're gonna raise the clouds and we're gonna lower the wind. But as soon as we get back into the sim, it's gonna undo that on us. I don't know why it does that. And while it's doing that, we're gonna swap our G1000 panels. And we're gonna load up G3X panels.
New York Approach Golf, Foxtrot Sierra Romeo 01 is type 2 miles southwest of Kilo Juliet Romeo Bravo, 2,500 feet. Request clearance to transition Bravo airspace.
Golf Foxtrot Sierra Romeo 01 New York approach. Squawk 6362.
Squawk 6362 Romeo 01.
Romeo 01 radar contact 2 miles west of Kilo Juliet Romeo Bravo 2,600 feet. Cleared through the Bravo airspace. Maintain own navigation.
I'm gonna try
Cleared
that pop
through the
out
Bravo
again. 'Cause
airspace,
it popped out my
Romeo
2
01.
side. Yeah, same thing. It's messing up. That's fine. We'll fly it like that. So now it's telling us we're limited by GPU a little bit. Oh, we know that. So because this aircraft is much heavier in terms of graphics, now all of a sudden we're being limited by our GPU a bit. So that being the case, what we can do, so you can see we're bouncing back and forth. And if I look at GPU, I can see we're up at 86. If I pop this out, yeah, you can see 83, 85, 86. So let's get rid of that again. What we should be able to do is go into DLSS. And if I put DLSS on auto, that should adjust it as needed. So you can see automatically it drops our rendering down to 1280 by 720. Let's see, which one is that? Quality. The quality is 1280 by 720. So let's go back into auto. And we see that it automatically drops us down to so I did not take a great look. We'll do a pass down the city. Yeah, so I'm seeing quite a bit of limited by main thread.
500.
And now the playability, I can feel the stuttering. Although, you know what we should look at? I wonder, am I just feeling wind? All right, DLSS. What were we doing? Go back. I don't remember what we were just doing. Oh, I wanted to turn down the wind, so I'm curious. Is it just that's bumping us around? I'll leave that where it was, that we're having an apples to apples comparison. So by turning the wind off, that actually helps. No, it's still, you can still feel it's more stuttery. It's not awful, it's playable. One of the things that I really can't stand about this aircraft is how fast it pitches, but how slowly it rolls. I know for a fact this aircraft in real life does not roll that slowly. It rolls slower than a Cessna in the simulator. That roll rate is not the case. So yeah, so this is playable, but you can see the stutters every once in a while. So that's why I believe on last videos I had just turned everything down to high if I was flying this aircraft in the sim. So maybe I take back my statement. If we want to fly, if we want to fly 5 monitors on Ultra, you gotta fly a Asobo aircraft, no third-party aircraft, unless it's really well optimized.
500. 500.
Because the only other thing we can do is go down to balanced and see what that does. But then the question is there, do we see a significant impact on... Doesn't look like it's helping the frame rate out.
500.
I'm gonna go back to TAA. Turn some of this stuff down. See if that helps. Okay, well it really didn't like something there.
500.
Pause.
500.
Wow, what
500.
happened there? It's still not happy about something. Alright, that might have... Now it looks like it's back to normal. Let's just put everything to high and see what we get there. TAA, frame generation on, and we're on high. We'll unpause. So still telling us limited by GPU every once in a while. So even on high, it doesn't like this aircraft in the city. So we'll do a pass down the center line, and we'll see if it's any smoother than it was on. Now that it's had time to settle out a little bit, we'll see if it's any smoother than it was with DLSS enabled.
500. 500. 500. 500. 500.
Kind of hard to say. It definitely feels stuttery like this. It's stuttery. Let's see. Does it tell me what my input latency is? Because it almost feels like the aircraft has some latency. Let's do auto again. We'll see if that helps. So like that right there, just ripping it. It certainly rips better with
500.
yeah, so it's smoother like that when you turn on DLSS.
500. 500.
If I look at GPU right now, GPU, so according to the Xbox Game Bar, it's telling me the GPU is, oh, because now I offloaded it a bunch by turning it DLSS on. So GPU is now down at like in the 60s. I'll have to turn DLSS off again and see what it's telling me there. Because this is nice and smooth now. And look at the frame rate. We're up at, so high and DLSS. Look at the frame rate. We're up at 26 again, ripping it around.
500. 500.
So now if I enable head tracking, that kind of messes with it a bit.
500.
But with head tracking off, it seems to do just fine.
500. 500. 500. 500.
Yeah, so I'm going to say this is absolutely playable. Just like when we had the... Are we going to lose it? We lost it. So just like with the Cessna, and we had TAA mode, and we had ultra graphic settings, and we said this is perfectly playable and smooth, and we weren't dropping below 24 frames, which with frame generation was giving us above 50. I'm going to say the same thing now for this third-party aircraft, with the settings on high and then DLSS on auto mode. We're seeing the same thing.
500. 500. 500. 500.
All right, so we're going to do a quick landing and then we're going to call this quits. Tells me my throttle's back to idle. I think it's because we're descending so much it's still going crazy. I think there's a helipad over here somewhere. This is how we ended our last video. Yeah, this helipad right here. So we're going to do a low pass of this just to inspect it. So that seems like something we can land on right there. So we're going to shoot for that. We're going to take full flaps in. Try to get our speed settled way back. We want to keep our altitude nice and low just because we know this is going to be a challenging landing. We want to keep our speed around 50 here coming into land. Start slowing it back. Alright, we want to plant it and then get on the brakes. Full aft stick, full brakes. Oh, and the brakes sucked. Come on. We had that one. I don't know why the brakes didn't work. Anyhow, yeah. So the takeaway here after a few days of testing is this new GPU absolutely changes the simulator completely. It takes it from this 5 monitor simulator. I barely flew the thing before because every time I booted it up, it was all, me just being frustrated that it wasn't performing the way that I envisioned it would. And now it's performing the way I envisioned it would. Of course, I would love to upgrade my CPU, but with Ryzen not supporting the current motherboards anymore, upgrading my CPU would require a new motherboard, new RAM, PCIe Gen 5, probably a new CPU cooler, plus the CPU. So all in, I think we'd be looking at I don't know, $1,000 or so, probably more, to upgrade my CPU now. So that's just not going to happen for a couple years. So I think this is the new setup we're going to be flying for the next couple years. And for now, yeah, I'm happy with it. We're not going to be ripping through the city all the time. So in terms of getting from point A to point B on the Pilot Edge network, practicing like we fly in the real world, I think this hardware is going to be perfect for doing that with 5 monitors set up. So I hope this information is helpful for people out there, and we'll see you guys in the next one. See ya.